All right, welcome. Sam Bisnick here with Release Muscle Therapy. In this video, I want to cover how to do self-release therapy for the bottom of the foot, heel pain, but also plantar fasciitis, some of the more common situations in which you would want to do this, but there are a number of others. So the plantar fascia is contained on the bottom of the foot. If you're not aware of this already, it's that thick, dense connective tissue that's on the bottom. And in particular, plantar fasciitis pain tends to present here down toward the heel on the inside of the foot. So oftentimes what is recommended is to do some self-massage work in this area. Most people are going to prefer to put their foot on a ball or some kind of implement in order to roll this out. So it's important to note, first and foremost, plantar fasciitis is a little bit complicated because there's many components that need to be addressed with it, and the rolling is only one part of it. So don't believe any of that nonsense when you see videos that talk about plantar fasciitis rolling on the bottom of your foot will fix all of your issues. More than likely it will not. It should be a part of a larger approach to dealing with the issue. So I'll just leave that there, but there's definitely other videos that I have that will talk about this. Now when it comes to rolling on the bottom of the foot, we have a lot of different options. You can use something small like a golf ball, but also I'm going to start showing you here with just the use of a tennis ball. But the size of the implement is going to make somewhat of a difference because of the contact surface, and of course the smaller the implement is, such for example a golf ball, the more pressure is going to be placed in a smaller area or region. But that's also going to depend upon how hard you're pushing your weight down. Okay, so I've got three options here just to show you. Number one, I have a tennis ball. Most people have access to a tennis ball, super cheap, highly available. Number two, a different type of ball that's a little bit heavier, kind of is almost about the size of a pool ball, for example. And one of them that's a little bit different, which is kind of more like a spiky ball. Now, what is the real difference between these two? It's just different forms of stimulation. When you push down into the golf ball, the tennis ball, it is going to flatten a little bit, so it has a little bit more give. A harder surface like this ball here is not going to give whatsoever. And the spiky ball, because it has a lot of different points of stimulation, is probably going to have a little bit more of a neuro effect than the other ones, because you're going to be perceiving more pressure in many areas, and that is the difference that will have. But the bottom line is, pick the one that you like. You can rotate them if you happen to have them available. They're all going to have an equal effect. So here's another piece before we start rolling on this. The idea a lot of times with soft tissue therapies, you see this all over online. I've seen a number of videos where somebody is just absolutely cranking on someone's tissue. This concept that we are releasing scar tissue and we are releasing adhesions and so forth when we're doing soft tissue work is highly questionable. But I bring this up because if the therapist has the mindset that they're breaking up scar tissue, or you do when you're doing your self-therapy, it automatically, for the most part, implies you should push harder. And the harder you push, the better the result. But I'm here to tell you that is not true. I've been a soft tissue practitioner for 20 years. Over the years, as I get better in my craft, I use less and less pressure. Most of the effects are going to be neurological, and this squares up with what the science shows on pain. The idea here is to change the information going from the tissues to the brain and the brain's processing of what's going on. So if we understand that pain relief ultimately is a reduction in threat generated from the tissues, then it doesn't make sense to push as hard as we can. It doesn't result oftentimes, most often I should say, in faster results. So when you do this, I always advocate in the beginning on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being hardly doing any pressure at all, a 10 being just brutal, excruciating discomfort. You should be at maybe a 3 to a 5 to begin with. It's always easy to graduate the pressure as the nerves get less sensitive than it is to overdo it and deal with a flare-up for many days before it calms down and you can apply the therapy again. We don't want to do that. So you want to take that tennis ball, stick it on the ground. I always say start in the seated position first, and that way it's very easy to apply more loading to the tissue just by leaning forward or backward. And a lot of people are going to have an acute plantar fasciitis, which you should always talk to your doctor about before doing this stuff, by the way, but you're not going to require a lot of pressure in order to get the effect. So if I just stick that ball on the ground and I'm just going to rest my foot right on top of it, now number one, am I already getting a 3 to a 5? Okay, you might be already, and if you're getting that degree of sensitivity already, then that's a good place to start. You've got two options here. You could either just hold on that area and just let it desensitize, or two, we can roll around a little bit in a small kind of semicircle, rolling back and forth, just working on the various tissues in that area to desensitize. Either tactic will work, but you can certainly rotate them around. So I'm just going to be rolling around there on the bottom of the plantar surface of the foot, looking for tender areas, and when I find something, I can either keep rolling on it or I can just hang out there. If I want to add a little bit more pressure, all I have to do is to take my elbow and then just lean it on my knee. As I lean my weight forward, I'm getting more pressure on that ball. And again, I can maintain that as I roll around on my foot, or I can just hold on that area. Okay? So we would continue this process. I usually recommend 3 to 5 minutes. That goes by really fast when you're doing this. So it's not a huge amount of time. You don't need to be rolling on this thing for 10 minutes or anything like that. But it's really easy to do throughout the day, especially if you have a desk job or anything. Slip your shoe off, do a little bit of rolling, and then get back to work again. Okay? So the techniques don't really change too much when you use a different surface. The spiky ball is about like that. A lot of times the spiky ball has a lot of stimulation very quickly. So in that area in particular, I find that less pressure is better. So again, most of my weight being back on my butt rather than on my foot. And because there's a lot of neurostimulation from all the spikes and that massive flood of sensory input, just rolling around lightly on the bottom of the foot can be very pleasant and can give you some pain relief. The other tactic to use here is to go from a spiky ball, something that's a little bit more intense in terms of that stimulation. And once you give it a few minutes on this, is to actually go backward and go to a tennis ball, because now when you roll on it, it should feel less sensitive. Okay? So the end result out of this, if you're rolling at an appropriate intensity, you're not pushing too hard, and you're working for 3 to 5 minutes, then you should be able to get up and walk around and feel a little bit better. Okay, so that might reduce pain points by 1 to 2 points, maybe taking you down from a 6 to a 4, for example, and feel more comfortable. This process would be repeated on a regular basis. Now, the most important part here out of intensity and things we talked about is frequency. If you want nerves to desensitize, then you need to expose them on a regular basis, but that's going to be based on how intense it is. The more intense you push, the less you can expose yourself to it. So I advocate super light intensity and a high frequency. You might do this 3, you might do this up to 6 times a day, as long as the intensity is very low and you're only giving it 3 to 5 minutes of stimulation, appropriate intensity on there, and you're doing this as part of a more cohesive program to address the plantar fascia. So I hope that helps. Don't go too intense. Pick a surface that works for you. 3 to 5 minutes, high frequency. Comment below, let me know how it works for you. I hope it does the trick for you in reducing your pain. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you give me a like and a thumbs up down below, and subscribe to the channel for more videos.